what's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal America's show. I'm your host, robnoerr. Happy to be here. I had a fantastic weekend with the family. Glad to be back. Hopefully, this will be the second to last week that I'm streaming with this crappy laptop when I'm not at my home office. As you can see up top, I have a subscriber goal to get my new PC, which I will be traveling with. I'm going to try to build it myself. Hopefully that will continue to increase the quality of the streams you see. So with that, hopefully I'll be able to get some sort of green screen type background to blur out stuff, and maybe we can get some video going on while I'm not at my home office as well. But for now, you get the logo, you get the soothing sounds of my high-pitched nasally voice, and I'm happy to be here. The YouTube chat just crushing it tonight with Achilles, Drew the Dogman, Nico. You guys are crushing it. Ninja coming in as the sole Twitch chatter. Thank you so much to all of you. And hello. Rumble's 45 seconds to a minute behind. Yeah, I'm not surprised. There are problems with Rumble. Let's not kid ourselves. But the positives vastly outweigh the negatives. There's Chris. What's up, man? So last night, you should check out the stream I did last night explaining that, unfortunately, Drunken Debates has ended. However, we are making a go on the Crucible with my new show, The Arena, that will be Saturday evening. So as a result, I probably won't be streaming Friday night. So it looks like the new schedule will be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday will be my streams. And then sometimes Wednesdays, Fridays if I have a special event planned. But yeah, I know, Nico. The other thing is I get a lot of numbers on Rumble, and a lot of people have trouble with the chat there. So I'm going to see what I could do. Maybe, what's up, Aftershock? Maybe I'll be able to create my own website where all of the chats can occur there. What's up, my friend Jeff? I hope all is going well, Jeff. So, you know, that's something that I'll be working on, and then it doesn't matter what platform you watch, you'll be able to go to that website and be able to chat with everyone. So I know Destiny and some other people have something like that, and that's definitely the way to go. It's just a matter of pricing and the technology, which I'm an idiot, so yeah, I'm not giving up on Rumble either. Definitely not. So it's hard for me, especially when I'm not at my home office, to be able to check the chat out. But right now on the live chat in Rumble, TX Joseph, thank you for being here, man. He says, was John another no-show on Friday? Yes, he was. John was unable to come. I will briefly explain again. I did last night, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But here's the deal. I think John is a guy who is very busy. He's expanding Shell Shock CBD. He's got some other projects in the works. And I think that it was incredibly generous of him to offer to let me co-host Drunken Debates. And I think what he realized was, with all of his other projects, he wasn't able to put the time into that show. And so it wasn't really fair to me and Aftershock, because Aftershock's trying to produce a show, I'm trying to moderate a show, and when he can't be there and we're promising people that he will be there, it's kind of like, you know, we're not fulfilling our end of the bargain. So it's not fair to us, and it's also not fair to himself. I don't want someone to work with me out of a sense of obligation. I'm hoping that the people that work with me are doing so because they enjoy doing so. So, you know, for example, Aftershock producing, I don't want Aftershock to feel like this is work and that he is, you know, spending time in doing something he doesn't want instead of life goals or hanging out with family and things like that. So we amicably parted ways and was immediately offered a position on The Crucible that's ran by Andrew Wilson to do a panel show, which we are calling The Arena, which will be Saturday nights at 8 p.m. If you want to learn more about that, you could go to my video yesterday, my live stream yesterday. I think it went out on all platforms. So you can check that out. I did about an hour live stream kind of explaining what that show is going to be. It's going to be fantastic. Me and Aftershock have total creative control over it. And I think it's going to be a really great thing. So what's up, Chuckles? To those that liked the concept of Drunken Debates, I think it's going to have almost everything that you liked. To those that are John Burke fans, there's no hard feelings between myself, Aftershock, and John Burke. But yeah, that show will not be. And Aftershock definitely puts in an insane amount of work. Aftershock probably puts in. Hey, thanks so much, Chuckles, for the gifted sub. Now, I mentioned this last night. I did this little bit, but I am ordering my new computer parts tomorrow. And so, yeah, Jeff, we'll talk a little about the UFOs. Yeah. I will be ordering those parts tomorrow or Wednesday, depending on when my paycheck comes through. However, I assume you all will buy that computer for me. So if someone could generously donate 800 subs or so in the next 5 minutes, that would be wonderful. No, Chuckles. You were the last person. No, Aftershock actually has a friend who builds computers who set everything up for me. So, but I figure Achilles or Jeff or Creus, someone will send me $2,000 by the end of the stream. Is my guess, and then everything will be good. If you really wanted to, you could just send me like $1 million and then I could quit my job. Jeff says, quick question ending with military experience. Would there ever be a situation where we'd shoot an unidentified object? Now, I don't have military experience, but I can tell you that I believe the answer would be yes. So let's say that you are flying a plane through U.S. airspace and you aren't on the air traffic registry. There are situations that occur where the U.S. military will send planes up to intercept you until they could make sure of who you are. And if they felt that you were a threat and you were unresponding, they could actually shoot you out of the air. I don't think that would be different for an unidentified object. If they try to make contact and no contact is forthcoming and they feel that there's a potential threat from the aircraft, they may decide to shoot it down. I would say the chances is... the CTV has military background, so maybe he will chime in here. But I would say the chances of these being UFOs in the sense that they are, extraterrestrial are nil. There are two possibilities for what's going on with these aircraft that we might as well jump in. My stream got really blurry? That's strange. Nothing showing up on my end, weird. But one is that these are actual aircraft from the United States. So from or that we're not being told the truth, and that this is being used simply as a distraction. So it could be that these are aircraft that are being put up there by the U.S. military intel agencies to make it seem as if there's some sort of threat. I would say that's not very likely, though. Or maybe the aircraft just aren't up there and they're just bullshitting us. That's funny, Chuckles. Aliens cross our border, give them handouts. Alien cross our sky, shoot it down. It's funny. I would say that these probably are Chinese, would be my guess. Are they as sophisticated as we're being told? Perhaps. But I think what happened is this sort of aircraft has probably been around for a while. And it was never made a big deal until the Biden administration was embarrassed with the balloon situation. I don't even mind them if they suspect that it's Chinese, as long as they're trying to communicate with the Chinese government and communicate with the aircraft. And if they're not getting a response, I don't mind shooting it down. But what I think is that this is very reminiscent of the Afghanistan withdrawal, where even though I supported the idea of the withdrawal, what occurred was they did so in such an amateurish way that it ended up resulting in U.S. servicemen being killed and our allies being killed, we were told by ISIS-K. This is because they closed down Bagram Air Base, where we had a secure air base to fly out the United States military personnel, civilian personnel, our allies, and the military equipment. But they closed that air base, and then they tried to evacuate from a civilian air base, which, unbelievably, the security was being ran by the Taliban. The very group that we had to be there fighting for 20 years, when we withdrew finally, was the group that we were relying on for security. The same Taliban, by the way, that went to Bagram Air Base and took it over when the United States withdrew, and then freed the prisoners there, many of which were ISIS. So we were relying on the Taliban, who freed ISIS, to protect the U.S. and their interest from ISIS. And predictably, it went awry. So this was such an amateurish move. In order to change the news cycle, what the Biden administration decided to do was brag that they found the culprits. They were called ISIS-K, and they bombed them. Only one problem: it wasn't ISIS-K. They bombed children. And we would have never heard that story if it wasn't for independent media, independent people that were talking on places like social media. The mainstream media wouldn't have covered that. So what happened was, in a rush to change a bad news cycle, they tried to make themselves look like tough guys launching missiles, and it backfired. But it didn't matter because so many lefties are... nothing could change their support. Though maybe we'll get to a story later that we'll see. And the mainstream propagandists are interested in running, protecting the Democratic establishment, and so they did their best to do so. This reeks of that to me. The balloon, which was visible to the central United States, the story changed umpteen times from the Biden administration. They looked like total fools. They looked weak. And now it's, we're shooting stuff down left and right. Now, is it a chance that they look like fools with the balloon, but now they legitimately are facing more of a threat than usual? Yeah, there's a chance of that. I know, as I've been saying since before the election of Biden is weak. Our adversaries, our foreign adversaries, will test us. They saw how incompetent the Afghanistan withdrawal is. The United States military is stretched thin. It's not been doing well in war games that we've had, for example, with the UK. I saw a couple years ago the United States didn't do good. We have generals and other military officers that are proudly posting photos of them dressed up like furries and dogs and their weird pre-versions. Our military brags about flight suits for pregnant women. We're more concerned about how many trans people are proudly serving in the military as opposed to whether or not our military is competent. Now, maybe the military is still better than that of China or better than that of Russia. That could be. We certainly are spending enough money in the technologies there. But the signal that's being sent out is one that welcomes someone testing. Did they update the Twitch interface or something? I don't know. Not to mention the connections that Biden has to China. 10% for the big guy, his son proudly bragging that he was working with the spy master of China. What's up, Gizmo? I hope everything's going great. Now, I want you to look back at the Trump-Russia... Thank you so much, Gizmo. Really appreciate the donation. Look back at the Trump-Russia gate situation again. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but this was concocted by the Hillary camp, working with a suspected Russian spy to spread this rumor that the intel agencies ate up and used to smear Trump for 4 years, and even after 4 years. When we read through the Columbia Journal Review's evisceration of the mainstream media during the Russiagate saga, Remember, it started off saying, initially in 2015, in about April of 2015, there were several stories that were breaking about Hillary Clinton's connections to Russia. For example, as the Uranium One deal was going off, where our enemy, that we're told by the Democrats, our greatest enemy, Russia, we sold 20% of the U.S. uranium to them, which Hillary Clinton's office signed off on. While that was ongoing, Bill Clinton personally met with Vladimir Putin, and then 2 weeks later was given a speaking gig at a Russian state bank where he was paid $500,000. And so in order to, the Clintons, the establishment, what they're good at is accusing you of what they do. So they worked with a suspected Russian spy to smear Trump as working with Russian spies, of having connections. But the part I want to focus on is, anytime Trump said anything or did anything that looked like it could be easing tensions with Russia, he was accused of being a plant for Russia. Despite the fact that sometimes, to my chagrin, Trump was harder on Russia than any president since Reagan. Sanctioned the Nord Stream pipeline. Dispelled diplomats from Russia. Increased energy production in the United States. Sent Javelin missiles to Ukraine. He just said cheap words like, yeah, I don't think Putin's a bad dude. Which, by the way, was Trump's talking style, which I actually think is something that's kind of intelligent. And that is, your friends, your allies, you push to do more. You should be paying more. And your enemies, particularly those that are strong men, that are arrogant, you talk up. Oh, Kim Jong-un's not that bad of a guy. Putin's not that bad. He's shrewd. Cheap words, but your actions are different. But think back out to everything. Oh my goodness. Anything that was done. Any sort of, suggestion of pulling troops out of Syria. Trump's pro-Putin. Where's that energy now? Now we have Chinese spycraft over the United States. And we know that the president's son was bragging about working with the Chinese government, including the spy master of China. Where's that energy for, Trump's actions prove he's an agent of Putin? It turned out that was all bullshit. But there is credible evidence that the Biden family has been working with our enemies, the Chinese. And so when we see China emboldened coming over the United States, when we see things like one of the first things Biden did was close down the task force that Trump had set up investigating the origins of the pandemic and whether or not it came from Wuhan, the shutting down of domestic energy production. But where are all those people that wanted to say, oh my gosh, now I'm not saying this proves that Trump's a spy for Putin, or for Xi, but where are all the people that were accusing Trump of being a plant for Putin? All of a sudden they don't care about that. And China is by far a bigger adversary than Russia, both economically, culturally, and militaristically. It's almost like those people were full of shit the entire time. No. Couldn't be. Oh, Key Lime led someone here. Well, good luck. Key Lime's an okay guy for a lefty. I just thought that was very interesting. General Miley, or Milley, however the hell you say his name, remember, he bragged that he called the government of China. Thanks so much, Gizmo. I appreciate the donation. Incredibly generous. Thank you. Miley bragged. I called my counterparts in China and said, if Trump does anything aggressive towards you, I'll warn you first. That's treason. That guy's still there. That guy's still in charge. No, he's not, says Aftershock. Now, there are people that are saying, well, the UFO story, it's distracting from the disastrous environmental situation in East Palestine, Ohio. Or it's distracting for the Epstein client list is supposed to be coming out soon. Or it's distracting from the debacle that's leading us potentially to World War III. Or the border crisis, which is still ongoing. Or all of the stuff about the pandemic that we were bullshitted about. Or the terrible economic situation the country's in. And that certainly is part of it. But just like with the spy balloon, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, this is exactly what I think. My gut feeling is that these probably are aircraft from China, and that this sort of thing had been going on for a while, but the Biden administration's trying to save face because they were mocked, rightfully so, with the balloon situation. But I can't tell you that I'm 100% confident of that. I'm like 40% confident of it. What I do know is this. I don't trust our intel agencies. I don't trust the Biden administration. I don't trust our media. And that's not my fault. That's their fault. One of the problems with lying constantly that all of those groups do is if we ever do need one of those groups, who's going to believe them? Thank you so much, Syrian. It's not our fault that we're distrusting. Let me give you an example. Why would we trust the media? I tried to bring this up in Drunken Debates, but no one really had anything to say about it. Our media there's so many obvious things that our media have done. Counterpoints mentioned, for him, the most blatant manipulation of the media was that woman from CBS that was caught in a hot mic saying, we had the Epstein story, we had all of these connections, and basically our producers told us to shut it down years ago. That's a huge red pill moment. For me, most recently, the John Fetterman story. Our media tried to gaslight us that if we were the ones seeing a problem with John Fetterman, it was us. He was perfectly fine. He was fine. And now, but when did they swear in? January? What, month, 2 months into Fetterman being a senator? He's being hospitalized, and the New York Times bravely puts out a story. Oh, this dude's health's very poor. Sometimes when he's listening to people talk, they sound like the adults in the Peanut series. Well, the election's over now. Now the media can tell us the truth. 3 months ago, they were telling you were a piece of shit and a bigot if you had a problem with it. Hilariously, on Drunken Debates, you had Prime K saying, I think that we should encourage people with, disabilities to run for office. Hey, I have a big heart for people with disabilities. That's my job. I work with people with disabilities. Someone who's blind absolutely could be a senator. Someone who's deaf absolutely could be a senator. Someone who had a stroke and cognitively is incapable of having conversations or understanding people, that's not someone to be a senator. And it was evident. It was evident. And again, it's one of the frustrations that I have when I'm debating people, talking to people on the left. They're, no, it's not that bad before the election. Just like they did with Joe Biden. No, he's good. There's no decline there. Bandit says, raises the question, when was the last time they needed our trust and they weren't lying to us? Who knows? The intel agencies, yeah, very rarely. There are people in positions of power. Like, for example, let's say that a serial killer was on the loose and the FBI is legitimately trying to track them down. They could need to impart information to people that would be very serious about protecting yourself in that situation. But who would believe them? Could you blame people for saying something else is going on here? Do I think that what happened on 9/11 was terrorists specifically from Afghanistan? Well, no, they weren't from Afghanistan. They were from Saudi Arabia. What was it? 19 of the hijackers. The official story is that they were from Saudi Arabia. I believe the terrorists were, as we were told. The question is, were they incentivized by U.S. agencies? Probably. Were they trained? Did those agencies intend for this attack to occur? Maybe, maybe not. But the attack occurred. The people that claim that it never happened is craziness. Anyways. But, Johnny, it brings up something, right? Not everything's a false flag. Things do happen. Sometimes there are hurricanes. Sometimes there are terrorist attacks. It's true. It happens. Now, sometimes the United States government is creating those attacks. In fact, about a third of the time, according to the numbers I've found, of the domestic terrorist episodes that they get arrested for were plots that were created by the FBI in the first place. But the important part is the government, our establishment, are experts at exploiting these things. They didn't have to create the situation necessarily, but when the situation happens, they know how to exploit it for their purposes. It's a question I had, Syrian. It's entirely possible that the Paul Pelosi situation is as we're being told, basically. That it wasn't a lover, that it was some maniac. But the important part is to know that that story was exploited by the Democrats to try to shame people like me. People that are critical of the Democrats. People that are critical of the establishment. I don't have to prove, no, this was Paul Pelosi's lover. First off, as I said from the get-go, I feel terrible for Paul Pelosi. I don't care what the circumstances are. An 80-year-old man getting beat with a hammer, that's serious. I feel terrible. But I don't see evidence. You didn't hear me saying, oh, I know this was his gay lover. I didn't say that. My only interest in the story was they're exploiting it in order to gaslight people into silencing and censoring people like me that are critical of the Democratic Party. When the opposite happens, we had in Jersey 2 Republican councilmen were shot and killed last week. Imagine if those were Democrats. Imagine what we would be told. Oh, this is Tucker Carlson's fault. It's right-wing streamers' fault. But when it happens the other way, when Rand Paul gets attacked, when Steve Scalise gets shot, when there's a the assassination attempt on Kavanaugh, no one says maybe CNN did this, maybe Bernie Sanders did it, maybe Joe Biden did it, maybe it was the rhetoric of Hillary Clinton. No one says that. Now let me be clear. The worst conspiracy theory that I've ever heard is that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself while 2 cameras malfunctioned, while 2 guards fell asleep. And that's the official story that we were told by Bill Barr, by the FBI. That's bullshit. So I'm not going to sit here and mock anyone for any, quote, conspiracy theory. I don't do that. I don't delve in, though, because to me, it's not something that I'm really interested in. I think many times it could get out of hand and there's not a lot of proof for it. But more importantly, the way to attack is, what are they using this story for? So even if 9/11 happened exactly as we were told, was it worth the Patriot Act? Was it worth 20 years in Afghanistan? But that's what they used it for. Right, then when we have tragedies or terrorist attacks that go the other way, that would indict people in those establishment institutions, all of a sudden, we have no answers. We don't know. Las Vegas shooting, a bunch of right-wingers at a country music show got shot. We don't know. We don't know. Oh, well. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the follow. But this Fetterman story, it's wild. It proves it's not wild in the sense that, of course, this is what you would expect them to do. They're going to carry water for the establishment Democratic politicians. That's what the majority of the media is going to do. But the blatant way that they lie. Thanks so much for the follow, kid. They're not even trying anymore. Not even trying. Yeah, Fetterman's fine. Then a month later, oh yeah, this guy's in bad shape. Oh, the election's over, so now it doesn't bother us. Regardless of what these aircraft are, that in combination with the situation that we see in Ukraine, the escalations, we are closer to World War III right now than any point in my life. I'm not talking about the doomsday clock. That stuff's all bullshit propaganda. I'm not saying that it's going to kick off in a nuclear war tomorrow, but we're closer. Now, when I talked to people in 2015 that were freaking out about Trump, yeah, that's a great point too, Surian. Right. The job numbers for 2022. Whoops, we said we created millions. Actually, it was only like 17,000. That story went right out real quick, didn't it? Yep. Great point, Surian. But when I talk to people my friends that hated Trump and were worried about Trump getting elected, there were two main arguments that were brought up. Can people in the chat tell me, what was it that you heard people saying? This is why Trump can't be president. There were two arguments, and it's one of them that I want to focus on. Two general arguments, we'll put it that way. That's right, Bandit. That's the one I want to focus on. That he would start World War III. That he's this psychopath and his foreign policy would be a disaster. Our allies would laugh at us. Our enemies would be emboldened. His finger would be on the nuclear button. Yeah, unstable, unpredictable. The other thing was, he's a racist bigot that would lock people up and blah, 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 blah. Which was bullshit. Now, there's many things to criticize Trump for, and I've certainly done it. But foreign policy-wise, we had no new wars created, though he did do bad things like bombing Syria, continue to fund the war in Yemen. We had historic peace deals between Israel and Palestine. Almost immediately when Biden came into office, his first month, what did he do? He bombed Syria. I remember talking to Dylan Burns before the 2020 election about who would be tougher on China, Trump or Biden. And I said, well, we'll see then, right? If Biden wins, we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding. Will China be emboldened or not? Right? If China starts to get more aggressive, you would admit that was a mistake to go with Biden on that, right? And he said, well, not necessarily. Right. Because we knew. It's not just the connections and the corruption between Biden and China. It's that they don't give a shit about this country. They're globalist. So they're not going to protect this country. We are in a late stage decline in this country. It doesn't mean that it can't turn around, but that's where we're at. And once most people realize it, it'll be too late. We have continued to elect pricks on both sides of the aisle that don't give a shit about the people of this country. They're incompetent. They're corrupt. We have squandered the most productive people in the world. Unprecedented natural resources. A country built on the shoulders of giants that made this the strongest country in the world. And it's been squandered. It's not just corruption, though there's a lot of it. It's incompetence. Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary. How's that working out? Karen Jean-Pierre. She couldn't pass the speech classes at my local state college, where I graduated from. And she's the voice of the president. We have a president who has dementia and can't talk. The only person that Joe Biden could talk better for is the person that's supposed to be the voice of his presidency, Karen Jean-Pierre. It's laughable. The qualifications are you LGBT? You a person of color? Do you check the diversity box? That's occurring not just in our government. That's occurring everywhere. It's occurring in our military. It's occurring airline pilots, with our police. That's soccer. You said it, not me. The lies are so flagrant now, they don't even attempt. Fetterman's fine, Biden's fine, nothing wrong with him. Strongest economy ever. And you're flabbergasted. It's like, what? They don't even try. And it works for millions of people. They'd eat this shit up. I live outside a town called Clarion, Pennsylvania. It's in the sticks in Pennsylvania. I am 70 miles away from the town of East Palestine, Ohio. This is where this train derailed and a bunch of chemicals exploded. This happened last week. I am going to be straight up with you. I hadn't even heard of it until yesterday. Part of that had been I had other stuff going on, so I wasn't watching a lot of media content. But almost no mainstream media outlet covered this. Now they're saying it may be the biggest environmental disaster since Chernobyl. Fish dying, people afraid. The water's contaminated. The air's contaminated. I was reading today, one person was saying that it could be 100-mile radius that there's contamination, which would put me right halfway in it. Let's read some tweets about this, shall we? Maybe. There we go. This guy put a little TikTok out.
Trail derailment in East Palestine, Ohio.
And I think that it's worth checking out the information that he gave. He sums it up better than me.
This hasn't been getting a lot of coverage, and the coverage that it has been getting hasn't been very good. So let's talk about the trail derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. East Palestine's about an hour north of Pittsburgh, almost halfway to Cleveland. Norfolk Southern has a rail line that goes right through town, and this derailment happened right on the edge outside of town on the border of PA and Ohio. Of the cars that crashed, 5 of them contained vinyl chloride. It's a monomer used to make PVC. The reporting on this has gotten vinyl chloride confused with polyvinyl chloride, the polymer made out of vinyl chloride. Now, the reason that this distinction is really important is vinyl chloride is very hazardous and very flammable. Polyvinyl chloride is a plastics that's used in like everything. The other thing about vinyl chloride is that it boils at 8 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's shipped in its liquid form. Meaning that when these trains crashed and these started leaking, they weren't just leaking liquid, but they were spewing boiling gas. So vinyl chloride is really toxic. OSHA has the permissible limit of how much you can be exposed to it during an 8-hour shift as a 1 ppm part per million. Average over 8 hours. So prior to this, the biggest spill of this chemical was in New Jersey, where 1 train car and about 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride were spilled, but it didn't catch on fire. Now, this crash in Ohio has 5 train cars. These kinds of tanker cars can carry between 25 and 33,000 gallons. Let's call it 250 to 250,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. That's per train car, 5 train cars. There's maybe 1 million pounds of this toxic chemical spilling into the ground and also boiling off into the air. But then it caught on fire. I think this is where the reporting is really bad, because no one is mentioning what the byproduct of vinyl chloride burning is. Of the many byproducts of burning vinyl chloride, one of them is hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride is really unstable and latches onto water, like just water vapor in the atmosphere, and that turns into hydrochloric acid. So right now, government officials from the railroad, both the governor of Pennsylvania and Ohio, are calling burning off the 1 million pounds of this stuff a success, but not mentioning that it means that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of acid in the air, potentially. Now, ever since engineering school, I've studied a lot of industrial accidents. I just find it really fascinating, and organizations like the Chemical Safety Board, NTSB, and OSHA all have like really good reports available to the public. I think as a designer, it's really good to learn about mistakes. When looking at these kinds of industrial disasters across time, there are a couple things that are pretty universal across all of them. 1, the responsible party, in this case, Norfolk Southern Railway, always plays down the reality of the situation. Politicians also just repeat the same lines, and then news outlets just repeat the same. So all we're hearing is the responsible party's word.
Now, Norfolk Gunthrop is the company that ran this train. Apparently they have a relationship with the local governments where they run their fire departments and things like that. And so they've basically been incredibly tight-lipped. The governors of Pennsylvania and Ohio have both said nothing to see here. There was briefly an arrest made of a journalist that was there, though allegedly that arrest was because this journalist was speaking while they were having an official press conference, and so it was disruptive, they said. I believe the charges have been dropped in that. There are reports that people I've seen have put out that are in the area saying that basically as they went and tried to investigate the water sources and things like that, that there were security that was ushering them off and threatening them that they couldn't be there. Oh, did I say Northrop Grumman? No, it's Norfolk is the name of the... Norfolk Southern. Now, Norfolk Southern has stakeholders such as BlackRock, Vanguard, JP Morgan. Yeah, did I say Northrop Grumman? No, not Northrop. So, as that gentleman said there, traditionally what happens is they come in and they say, when these disasters happen, they say, oh, nothing to see here. The company responsible is like, nope, it's all good. And they have this relationship with the government, both local, state, and possibly federal. I did not see any chemical clouds in my neck of the woods, no. And so, because these institutions are so incestuous with our government, the reporting on this, because our media is shit, they're just the mouthpiece for the government at this point, has been next to none. And it's one of those things that we'll hear, just like the burn pit lawsuits with our veterans that suffered with those burn pits, or the disaster of, the cancer and carcinogens with the 9/11 cleanup job. You'll see years from now, oh, okay, we'll pay out some settlements and blah, 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 blah. Sent me a pic on Discord. Let me see if I can find that real quick. I'll check my phone. Ten Goat sends me a pic that says 10% of the U.S. population, over 30 million people, live in the Ohio River basin. The Ohio River itself provides drinking water to over 5 million people. It's unreal. Unreal. Now, I'm someone who believes in very limited government. I'm not a total libertarian. And one of the things I've seen is even a bunch of woke left-wingers are coming out like, what the fuck is going on? One of the attacks you will see, and again, we talked about this earlier with the UFOs and the shooting down, right? It doesn't matter. I didn't see a chemical attack near Amish country. No, I lived near Amish country. I didn't see anything like that. But it doesn't matter if this was directly caused or was a false flag or anything like that. Our government, our institutions aren't going to accept blame. At best, they'll scapegoat someone. And so what they'll do is, their expert says, they'll say, see, we need more government. Bigger government control. If we had more regulations and more government control, then an accident like this wouldn't occur. But the truth is that it's that government intervention that's largely responsible for the disaster that we see playing out. Because these large institutions and corporations understand that if the government has the power to issue regulations, they also have the power to issue loopholes. And they have the power to protect the agency, or the corporations. So the reason that people will be suffering, that the situation wasn't taken seriously initially, is because the relationship with Norfolk and the government in the first place that sought to cover it up. Global warming's why the balloons are shut up, yeah. Now, I'm not saying there's never a place for any regulation. If a company, through negligence or purposefully, causes incredible environmental disasters, I do believe that our government should have the responsibility to seek justice for that. So I'm not an ANCAP. But just like with the PPP loans, we have lockdowns which cause the economic catastrophe, and then their solution is, well, what we need is more government intervention, which then exacerbates inflation. Doing good, Terry. Thanks so much. Razor Leaner. There's a name. The EPA is just another political hack group like the IRS or like the FBI. Seeing as how this is a train, it falls under the criteria of transportation. Where's Pete Buttigieg? Well, he gave a speech today. He was at some sort of event. Did not bring up the incident. Quite possibly the biggest environmental disaster in 50 years in our country. And the transportation secretary had nothing to say. Our mainstream media has basically said nothing for a week. The state and local governments are like, everything's fine. It's okay. Now, regardless of what you think of unions, I saw that Pete Buttigieg was complaining about white construction workers at the press conference. That's where their priorities lie. Regardless of what you think of unions, the rail workers were on a strike, in part because of pay, bad work conditions, unsafe conditions. And I read a thread from someone who claims to be a conductor for Norfolk, who claimed that these sorts of maintenance issues are creeping up all over the place because the laxed approach that the company's taking. The Biden administration took a victory lap when they basically busted the strike. They were happy to do so. Now what happens? And lefties are even calling this out. One of the things that the woke left, the Democrats, etc. have been pushing is high-speed rail transportation. They talked about the dangers of the pipeline. But actually, if you look into the figures, transporting energy via pipeline is actually safer than rail or truck when you figure in how many trains disrail. Now, the figures I saw said it's about 1,700 trains in the United States derail a year. But I question what that means. I don't think that means the terrible disaster you see where people die, where it goes flying off and there's explosions. Maybe it just means it skipped the rail a little and it had to, no one gets hurt, nothing's really damaged, but it takes a couple hours to get it back on track. Nonetheless, when you're talking about transporting chemicals, that's combustion point is 7 degrees Fahrenheit, that is incredibly toxic, that might be something worrying. But we were assured, for environmental reasons, pipeline's bad. Where are they today? Now, when you look at this, Robert Whaley, you're fantastic, by the way. Your comments are always very good. That's exactly where I was going next. Look at this in conjunction with the story breaking on the Nord Stream pipeline. Now, this is an administration that has repeatedly told us that climate change is the biggest threat to it. Climate change, our military is worried about climate change. Everything is climate change. Young people are suddenly dying. Climate change. Everything. Crisis at the border. Climate change. Supply chain crunches. Partially climate change. They're talking about Democrats are talking about banning gas cars. Biden said at the State of the Union that within 10 years they'd like to put the fossil fuel people out of business. That's how important they take climate change. But when we have actual environmental disasters, they seem to not be there. And it seems that they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, which was in itself an environmental disaster, which we'll get to in a moment. And one of the things I said with this climate change thing over and over again is, the people that focus on it are not only bullshitting you for political power reasons. Because, again, I'll say it again. Name me one proposed policy on climate change that doesn't mean the sacrificing of the poor and working class. Or, let me put it more bluntly. Stephen Colbert is willing to pay $15 a gallon for gas. But what about all my friends and family that are living paycheck to paycheck? Tough shit, right? They'll fly there, the celebrities and the powerful, they'll fly their private jets. But I won't be able to drive to work. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate it. But the other thing that happens is there are real environmental issues. And for me, I see the best environmentalists are right-wingers. Where I'm from, at least. They're hunters. Because they understand and appreciate the resource that our environment is to us. The forest, the animals. It's amazing how considerate these, that's right, conservationists are. Yet we never hear of that. So the left will say, we need to change the world, climate change. And the right is out there, and again, I use the words left and right loosely, but the conservationists are out there actually cleaning up our forests. No one wants to deal with the real problems really on the ground. They want to make it that, oh, it's the end of the world. We have to solve this problem. It's the end of the world. And so what happens? Well, they're not really concerned. The people in positions of power that are talking about this stuff, they don't give a shit about climate change. It's just an ends to a mean, just like terrorism with the Patriot Act. And so when there's actual environmental disasters, they don't give a shit. Huh? What? Can we exploit this to take away more rights from the average person? If not, we don't give a shit. Yeah, PA hunters are great. Also, I just want to say, mark my words, there have been allegations in the past of people sabotaging trains. Messing with the tracks. So keep an eye out for that to see if this is something. I have no proof, but it's something. The security, if you're talking about the potential to do so much damage to our environment and to our country by derailing a train, do we really think that there won't be people, whether it be domestic people that are have some sort of agenda or whatever, that wouldn't try to exploit that? Yeah, I was in the Boy Scouts for a while, yeah. Yeah, remember all the attacks we had in our electrical grids? Yep, people shooting electrical grids causing power outages? Or how about forest fires that could easily be started because of mismanagement in places like California that could cause billions of dollars of damage? If you were an enemy of the United States, be it domestic or foreign, it would be very easy to cause considerable amounts of damage. Good thing we got Pete Buttigieg running things, right? The Nord Stream thing. Again, it was another situation. You can't believe the brazenness of these people. Oh, Russia attacked their own pipeline. That's what it was. Are you shitting me? It was obvious garbage. And now Seymour Hersh, who's an award-winning journalist, reports. And again, I'm not saying this is 100% definitively true, but he's reporting that sources have told him that this was set up during a NATO exercise where explosives were planted, and NATO, led by the United States, intentionally caused the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline. Not only is that an incredible environmental disaster, but it's an act of war. Now think of what the implication... Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Well, clearly, the simple answer is to sabotage Russia. But they wouldn't have to blow up the pipeline. Couldn't they just say, well, we refuse to take the energy? But they couldn't do that. Why? Because they couldn't convince the people of Europe, who would be suffering through a cold winter, that were already financially strapped because of the sacrifices they were asked to make for lockdowns. They couldn't say, sorry, you're going to have to go without energy. It's there, but you can't have it. It wouldn't have been very popular. So, if the pipeline goes away, well, that is an act of war. This is no longer just a proxy war with the United States funding Ukraine to fight Russia. If the United States or NATO blew up this pipeline, that is an act of war. And regardless of who you think's at fault for the Russia-Ukraine situation, you might be in the camp that says Russia's at fault. Which, by the way, I have no love for Russia. Or Putin. That doesn't justify the United States and NATO blowing up this pipeline. If Ukraine's going to fight Russia and the United States and NATO is going to send Ukraine weapons, that's one thing, which I don't agree with. But if we're actively blowing up their pipelines, that's completely different. That's an act of war. That is first aggression by NATO and the United States. Ukraine is not a NATO ally. Where's all the journalists? They're just going to buy the story. Now Russia did it themselves. That's it. I'm going to Pulitzer-winning journalist for the New York Times. That's good enough for me. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So we finally, environmentalism, climate change is the biggest threat to humanity. And under the Biden administration, we have possibly the biggest environmental disaster in the history of the country. Just occurred, and they seem to not give a shit. And apparently they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, causing an incredible environmental destruction in the ocean where that occurred. But trust them when they tell you, you need to sacrifice more. You have to pay more for gas. You can't have a pickup truck. You can't fly in the way that you want. But they can do this shit, no problem. Let's see it outside. Here, going back to the East Palestine situation with the train, here's a local news report that I thought was interesting, if it's the one I think it is.
I'm Stan Boney. It's now been 10 days since Norfolk Southern train derailed in East Palestine, and tonight we know more about the chemicals that were on the train.
First News digital reporter Jen Rodriguez has been in the village today, taking a closer look at what else was on that train. She has those details and much more in our top story tonight at 6.
We now know 3 more chemicals that were on board the Norfolk Southern train that derailed here in East Palestine just over a week ago. And we're being told that some of those chemicals are dangerous.
We basically nuked a town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open.
the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency sent a letter to Norfolk Southern stating that ethylene glycol monobutyl ether, ethylexyl-acrylate, and isobutylene were also in the rail cars that were derailed, breached, or on fire. Caggiano says ethylexyl-acrylate is especially worrisome. He says it's a carcinogen, and contact with it can cause burning and irritation in the skin and eyes. Breathing it in can irritate the nose, throat, and cause coughing and shortness of breath. Isobutylene is also known to cause dizziness and drowsiness when inhaled.
I was kind of surprised that when they quickly told the people they can go back home, but then said if they feel like they want their homes tested, they can have them tested. I would have far rather they did all the testing.
Caggiano says it's possible some of these chemicals could still be present in homes and on objects until you clean them thoroughly.
There's a lot of what ifs, and we're going to be looking at this thing 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line and wondering, gee, cancer clusters could pop up, well water could go bad.
Caggiano recommends anyone who's in the East Palestine area get a health checkup. He says get a record now of where your health stands so that moving forward you'll have documentation of any possibly related effects to the train derailment. In East Palestine, Jennifer Rodriguez, WKBN 27.
Now, one of the things that this reminds me of is the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. And let's not get it twisted. Republicans and Democrats had a hand in that, though it was Democratic administrations in the town of Flint for years and years and years. It seemed like they're the ones who made the decision to divest from the pipes. In other words, to have cheaper pipe, which caused the problem because their corruption in the way that they ran their local government. But it amazes me that we live in a country where trillions upon trillions of dollars come into our government, where billions at the drop of a hat could be sent to send missiles to Ukraine to further increase a war, which leads to devastation of not just the people of Ukraine, but a chance of escalating World War III. There's universal agreement on that. We can get that sent. But we couldn't get drinking water in Georgia. We couldn't get drinking water in Flint, Michigan. Can't do that. These people are screwed in East Palestine. Sorry. If Ukraine would have if Zelensky would have bought a home in East Palestine, you bet your ass they would have done something. But as it stands, sorry. Poor rural community, who gives a shit? Poor urban community, who gives a shit? It's incredible. Talk about something else. I was on the Crucible the other day. I called in. Vaush was debating P.F. Chung on Jordan Peterson. And I called in because Vaush runs for me. Now, I called in on a phone. I don't know why I sound so damn lispy. I think it's my phone, but yeah, P.F. Chang's good stuff. Yeah. So you have to forgive me for sounding like a lispy fool, but we'll play some audio from that. Now, Vaush has been running for me. He will not do a one-on-one debate with me because he knows what will happen.
Shock sent in a $5 super chat. I'm getting peppered with these, so I'm just going to condense all of them together because they want me to ask this so bad. Robnoerr versus Vaush. Is a trans woman a woman? When's it happening, Vaush? There's a lot of extra emphasis behind that, by the way.
Maybe. I feel like the convos I've had with Rob weren't that interesting in the past. I don't normally run it through like on pity. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Robnoerr, you've been waiting.
Holy shit! Holy shit!
Go ahead with your questions.
That was when I called in, right? He said, as soon as my face popped up, he said, "Holy shit!" Now, the last time that Vaush was on the Crucible, someone sent a super chat in and said, when will you debate robnoerr? And he said, who? robnoerr. Now, understand, this was before the super chat. Surian put this up. So what you just heard, that super chat, this was before then. The Crucible's very good at taking call-in, so I called in before my name was ever mentioned in a super chat. And Vaush instantly recognizes who I am and says, holy shit, is what he says. That's what he said. But the last time he was on the Crucible, he acted like he didn't know me. Let's hear that again. What's Vaush's reaction to even just having to interact with me? A little bit?
I don't normally run it through like on pity. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
robnoerr, you've been waiting.
Holy shit! Holy shit!
Now, he said that he doesn't run it through on pity. That's a nice way of saying that he doesn't want to debate me. Now, the offer's been proffered many times. Even with this call, I was polite. I called off what I think Vaush is terrible, but he debates people that are lesser quality than me all of the time. So, he's just being disingenuous. Now, Vaush isn't obligated to debate me. I understand why he wouldn't want to. I honestly don't think Vaush is thinking to himself, I can't beat Rob in a debate. He's probably thinking to himself, it's going to be really fucking tough, and I'm going to have to put a lot of energy in it, and what do I get out of it? Rob doesn't have a big audience, and so there's only a chance that Vaush looks bad, so he runs from me. That's what's going on. But I just thought it was funny how previously he acted like he didn't know me, and then when I call in, holy shit! Let's hear that again. Great.
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
robnoerr, you've been waiting.
Holy shit! Holy shit!
Now, I'll play the audio here. Yeah, I know, fun one. His viewers, I got some ideas coming up to debate, but, and Thursday I debated Vegan Gains, and afterwards I was talking to Andrew from the Crucible, and he said he wanted to let the audience know the reason I don't debate much on the Crucible anymore isn't because I'm unwilling. It's not because Andrew's not reaching out. Most of the people he reaches out to don't want to debate me. They don't want to. So, I'll play this through. It's quite lispy, but I'll explain what I'm talking about. Again, this debate was on Jordan Peterson, and Vaush was basically saying that he's dangerous, leading to a trans genocide, etc. So forgive the lispiness that comes from my phone, and let's hear what I have to say.
Go ahead with your questions.
I had a question for Vaush. You're not claiming that Jordan Peterson's called for the shooting or the execution of anyone in the trans community or anything like that, right? You're just saying that his rhetoric could lead to bad policy and bad actors doing terrible things and violence.
I mean, he's agreeing with a prospective presidential candidate saying that they want to ban the ideology at every level and ban all medical intervention for it. So that seems like the literal first thing you do before shooting an ethnic group. Like nationally ban teaching about them and arrest people who do teach about them, and then exclude them from the healthcare system, and then you would shoot them.
Fair enough. I've watched you on a debate make comparisons to conservatives over and over to Nazis, as you're sort of doing here. And in that debate, I believe it was with a left-winger, you continually said, shouldn't we have stopped the Nazis in the 30s before they took power? You then went on to make a statement that I want to ask if you still agree with. You said that you want a world where left-wingers could shoot out windows at the Patriot Prayer type people in Portland, where, by the way, a Patriot Prayer member was executed in that very situation. He was open carrying, that group was open carrying lawfully. And you said you would like to see them shot. How can you criticize someone for taking a step that might lead to violence when you yourself are directly calling for it?
First of all, obviously not all violence is equivalent. You'd have to morally assess it. But second of all, you're
Now, I didn't catch that throwaway line that he said there, but that's Vaush. That's Vaush saying. He says not all violence is morally equivalent. Right. It's different. Hashtag it's different. When Vaush calls for violence, it's okay because it's moral. Now, weigh that against someone like me who says this political violence is always unacceptable. Right? what Vaush does, this is the argument I've had so many times, and Vaush exemplifies this, right? Where people say, but wait a minute, what about the Boston Tea Party? What about the revolution? Aren't there times when this political violence can be justified? And if you're like, well, okay, I guess there's times, they say, and this is one of those times. After all, there's a trans genocide occurring, so we have to be able to use violence. That's what he's saying when he says not all violence is morally equivocal. He's separating and saying what I call for violence, it's okay. Jordan Peterson saying, I don't want this shit in schools. He says that's dangerous. That could lead to violence and genocide against trans people. But when he blatantly says you should take your gun, I want a society where you could take your gun and shoot at right-wingers, he says, well, that's different. That's different.
Characterizing my position. I didn't say that people should have been shooting at the Patriot Prayer Boys. I was saying that if ever we reached a hypothetical scenario where right-wing militias were invading cities, shooting and killing people in some kind of social collapse situation, society falls apart, all the right-wingers in the hills of Washington and Oregon run out of the cities with their AR-15s and such. Under those situations, obviously, shooting at them would just be a matter of simple self-defense. That's a pretty easy ethical one. The reason I was talking about it there was I was defending the right to gun ownership. I was saying that if that social situation ever does happen, then I would rather not die to the right-wing militia. I'd rather be able to
go to part 2 here. By the way, thank you again. First off, follow me on Twitter. At Noor Robert, but also follow my friend Surian, who's always retweeting me and does just a great job putting clips
I didn't hear you say that. You didn't say, if you're clarifying those remarks, that's fine. But in the context of that conversation, you didn't say, you referenced the specific action the Patriot Prayer was taking. You said they were menacing people, they were harassing people because they were intimidating people with guns, and you wanted a world where they would be getting shot out. But I accept if you're changing your position. But the point I have is, don't you think it's incumbent on you to be more responsible for your action, seeing as how the issue that you referenced specifically did lead to the murder of someone by someone who is very similar in ideology to you?
I feel I was consistent and clear with my point before, but I don't remember every word I've ever said. Either way, I'm generally consistent on this point. I do believe in exercising the right to self-defense, and I don't believe it's irresponsible to exercise the right to self-defense either. I think we kind of have to, given the situation.
I just want to say that, I think that when you hear talk of censorship, talk of legitimate self-defense, the caller previously was right that all these institutions are dominated by people that share an ideology with Vaush. They might not be as socialist as Vaush, but Vaush isn't a socialist either. He's a millionaire, that moonlights as a socialist so he could keep getting money. That's what these leftists do. So, Vaush, I would love to debate you someday on this, but I know you keep running from me and pretending you don't know me. So anytime you want to debate, you talk to Andrew or me. We'll set up a debate on the topic of your...
And he just ignored me. Deepfake Rob, yeah. Let's see if I can find what Vaush said. It's so difficult because Vaush removed his video, I do believe. Don't take me at word, but I was unable to find Vaush's video on Twitch. So actually, I commented on and did a video on Vaush's takes, but it was from a Destiny video. So in other words, Destiny was streaming what Vaush said. Here's what Vaush said last time, by the way, that he was on the Crucible.
And then the last one is, Vaush, will you stop running and debate robnoerr 1v1?
Didn't I debate robnoerr?
You have not debated robnoerr.
Wait, I've talked to robnoerr, haven't I?
I guess they want a 1v1 debate.
Have I not directly? Oh, but he's such a maybe. I'll think about it.
He didn't know me there, really. Oh, yeah. This time it was, oh, shit. Funny. Good stuff. I'm seeing if I could find the video I did. So give me a moment. Still looking. Okay. So it's on Rumble. I'll put the link.
If you want to drive around with guns,
Magnitude worse than what Vaush was complaining about what Tucker Carlson did. But that's exactly what he's doing. Or someone like Ethan gets to the point where they're calling for... All right. So what we're going to do is...
But I have no...
It's shooting at conservatives that are open carrying. That we should shoot at them. That are legally open carrying. That's insane. So we're going to talk about that. I had a request to talk about... But that's not what the average lefty thinks. Let's be honest. I'm not going to bullshit you here. You hear a tragedy like Uvalde, and it's easy to see if you're not forward-thinking, just saying, ban all guns. Get rid of guns. Oh my God, this is horrible. Because it is a horrible situation. Privilege a lot in our society. If you're born in the United States of America, in this country ever has to live through. And so to act like we need this radical destruction, what I argue the most against, I argue for populism and I argue against corruption. But that doesn't mean that that we need to become Mad Max. And if you're new to my channel, or if you're watching this for the first time, not live, but sometime in the future, and you hear Rob say, oh, Rob's talking a lot about corruption, and Rob's talking a lot about insane left-wingers. What's the solution to that? I wonder, is Rob advocating anything? Is he saying that we need to go, physically attack, use violence? Ask people on my channel. I argue against all political violence more than basically anyone I know. It is not the answer. And when people on the right have suggested it, I've rebuked them. Aftershock is the one who painstakingly watched this video, time-stamped it, actually painstakingly watched 2 videos and time-stamped them. And so, thank you to him. Now, I haven't watched those timestamps. Second thing, I would like to thank, even though I didn't get their permission, I assume it'll be all right. The clip that Aftershock sent me is actually a video from Destiny on YouTube, where he is reacting to sort of Vaush saying these things. So that's the video that I have timestamped, so that's what I'll be using. So I usually like to thank the person whose video I'm using, so thank you to Destiny for that. I will put the link to that video so that anyone may watch that video and he gets credit. Aftershock is the third thing is I don't have... Thank you so much, Third Rail with Omar. It was great talking to you previously. Please check out his channel.
Oh, boy. That's funny. See, we're getting... This was right after I did an interview with Omar before he proved himself to be a meathead.
Omar, 3-4 months ago. So consider checking him out. He's on YouTube there. You see the channel, The Third Rail with Omar. Thank you so much for the super chat. Financial donations, very much appreciated. So
still appreciate the donations.
The third thing to say is I don't pay for the YouTube without ads. So unfortunately, ads might pop up while we're watching this. It's just something we're going to have to get through. So,
now, again, the reason I'm bringing this up is Vaush said when I pointed out that he called for the shooting of Patriot Prayer members, he said, no, he was saying in a hypothetical where groups like Patriot Prayer came down from the hills into the cities and started shooting people with ARs, then it would be legitimate to fight back. So this was from 8 months ago, and I thought, just so you could see how disingenuous Vaush is, I thought we would play the clip of me watching what Vaush said. I know it's a little meta, watching me watch me, but that's what's going on here. So,
without further ado, we're going to watch this clip. It's Destiny reacting to a Vaush video. For those that don't know, Destiny I would consider him more of a centrist
type left-leaning person, even though I think he has takes that I don't really agree with. He seems to be at least in the realm of sanity, someone who I enjoy talking to. Vaush, on the other hand, I find to be a sophist, who I think is disingenuous, who has routinely talked about it's okay to use all sorts of shady tactics if it means your side wins. I think he's sort of a postmodernist that believes there's no such thing as truth, at least that he is similar to the people like that I've ran into in my life, and everything's about power, and so if you have to lie or misrepresent the truth or call for horrible tactics like violence for your side to win, so be it. I have no respect for him. I have no respect for his argumentation tactics, as I've done at least one video analyzing a debate of his that shows some of these shady tactics that he uses. So Destiny, I think, is also disgusted with a lot of these comments from Vaush, but the point is to show how unhinged people that are vocal on the left are becoming. And make no mistake about it, not everyone on the left is Vaush or Ethan from H3H3, who just this week on a video said that someone should bomb the NRA. But these voices are out there, and many, many people follow these voices or agree with them. And more importantly, the cultural shift, or the culture that's been dominated by sort of the institutional left at this point, these sort of voices are radical enough to allow them to push for things like Canada, basically banning the sale of handguns, or in the United States, our president talking about banning 9mm and things like that. So it's important to look at how these unhinged conversations start. Now, for me, this started way back in the day with a person named Richard Spencer, who I actually debated. I got what I wanted out of that Richard Spencer debate.
Man, I'm fucking wordy. Let's just get to the clip, old Rob.
Which he admitted that the Democratic Party and the left wing is more of a home to white supremacists and white nationalists, because the racialization that we see so common on the left and the Democratic Party now is just the inverse of what the white nationalists believe. But way back in the day, maybe 2014, 2015, maybe slightly after that, Richard Spencer, there was a video of him getting punched, and he's this well-known white nationalist. And so this conversation started up, is it okay to punch a Nazi? And I believe it was The Guardian or The Telegraph put this video out that was like, well, maybe not, but yeah. And I remember back then talking to people on blogs that I was on was like, the answer is no. It's not okay to punch a Nazi. And you want to know the number one reason why? Because once you say yes, then you say, oh, and everyone I disagree with is a Nazi. If a Nazi is using physical violence or about to use physical violence on you, fair enough, you could defend yourself with physical violence. Other than that, even if they're saying heinous things like calling for a white ethno-state, no, you can't just go up to them and punch them. You can't do that. Once we say that those sort of tactics are acceptable, every political discourse that we have will now disappear. Because you can say, I don't like what you're saying, I find it evil and heinous, therefore I'll punch you. Take a simple debate that we've seen recently. Almost everyone, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, could make the argument that that's such a big, important issue, and the other side is so heinous that now we could justify using violence against them. That's one issue. Now imagine the complex issues that come around immigration, or that come around sort of the teaching of sex ed and LGBT and identity, gender identity with young people. All of these things on both sides of the aisle, people say this is such an important issue. Basically, the people I agree with are unhuman and therefore violence is justified. Once you say yes, it's okay to physically assault people I disagree with if they're heinous enough, then you are a small step away from saying, and by the way, everyone I disagree with is heinous. That's where this comes. And so back then I was arguing, no, you can't say this. And I argue this all the time when I talk to lefties. It's the same thing every time.
Yeah, you say political violence isn't justified. What about the Boston Tea Party? What about the American Revolution?
And I say for every one time that it's been justified in history, there's been 100,000 times that people have claimed that it was justified and it wasn't. And I don't see any issue, no matter how significant today, where that sort of violence is justified for a litany of reasons. One, because we've grown as a society, and second, because the violence isn't strategic anyways. And third, because it's used for immoral reasons, even if you could argue that there was morality at the center of it to begin with. It spirals out of control. Look at the French Revolution. But as soon as you say, I guess there was one time in history it was justified, this is what the leftists will say.
Well, don't we live in a systemically racist society? Well, that racism's the worst thing. So therefore, we're justified in using violence. If it was the Boston Tea Party was justified, then we're justified in using violence against our current racist system.
And there you have it. As soon as you say, I guess maybe once in a while this is justified, they'll say, exactly. And my issue is why it's justified. And that's exactly what we're going to see from the Ethan Ralphs of the world. Or, I'm sorry, Ethan Ralph. What's Ethan's last name? Klein from H3H3? Anyways, Ethan from H3H3, or what you'll see from Vaush. So first, let's do the setup where Vaush is going to explain how evil conservatives are. Now, one of the things that occurred during Trump was when they said the lie, by the way, the reason Joe Biden gave for running for office was basically that Trump, what he said about Charlottesville, implying that he said Nazis were good people. Trump never said that. Trump condemned white supremacy and racism in all three of his remarks, three of his speeches dealing with Charlottesville after Charlottesville.
But things were taken out of context and made it seem like he was saying that they were good people. He wasn't. They're good people on both sides statement. Immediately in the next paragraph, he says, of course, I'm not talking about white supremacists, the KKK, and people like that. They're heinous. We should call them out. But that misleading statement, and even our president now, Joe Biden, pushing that misleading statement, what does that do to a country? Millions of people believed that Donald Trump was a Nazi sympathizer. And by extension, that Trump supporters were Nazi sympathizers. What if someone believes that? What if someone takes that seriously? Right?
Yeah,
so if you're saying that, while simultaneously saying, and it's okay to punch Nazis, what's going to be the end event of that? So let's watch from this first clip. Let's make sure I have it up. And I don't, as always.
Now, what I want to mention right here is, remember, Vaush says when he said to shoot Patriot Prayer people, he was saying if they came down. But what I'm going to show you here is the entire debate that he was having with this guy, he was likening conservatives to Nazis. And he's asking questions like, shouldn't we have stopped the Nazis in the 30s before they got into power? Right? So for him to try to rewrite that at a later date, because as soon as the shoe's on the other foot, he's like, the problem with Jordan Peterson is he could inspire people to violence. But he's not. He's not calling for violent action. In fact, he's calling for the opposite. You just don't like his politics. But you say, but his politics could lead to violence. And meanwhile, Vaush is actually calling for violence. And so when called out on this, he just says, no, the context is different. And sometimes our violence is justified. So let's see if he's right, that he wasn't likening, or he wasn't saying we need to stop the evil conservative Nazis. He wasn't saying that. He was merely saying that if they start shooting us, we should shoot back. Let's see if that's the impression you get.
Let's watch what Vaush has to say about what current conservatives are doing.
In on this. You talk about nonviolent rhetoric. Okay. So I'm a big advocate for defensive violence here. I do think we're in the preliminary stages of genocide.
What? What do you mean by that, Vaush? Vaush, I'm gonna need you to clarify a little bit, buddy, because you sound a little bit fucking unhinged right now. Okay, that sounded a little bit unhinged.
It's queer people in particular, but probably adjacent groups as well. And in such an environment, I think it is politically irresponsible to treat the agents of that genocide with anything other than the greatest possible degree of moral condemnation.
So like this.
So his claim here is that the right is about to commit genocide against LGBT people and LGBT adjacent people. Now, the irony is, Vaush has talked about how Tucker Carlson should be responsible for the Buffalo shooter because Tucker Carlson talks about something called great replacement theory. Now, I don't follow everything Tucker Carlson says. I will say this. When I've seen Tucker Carlson talk about this, it wasn't racially based necessarily. What it was saying that they're trying to import votes. And those votes will disenfranchise the people that are already here, whether they be white, black, Hispanic, Asian, etc., etc. Is it true that they have a preference of what type of race they want to bring in? I don't know. I could understand that you've certainly seen lip service. Joe Biden himself has talked glowingly about how great it is that white people will no longer be the majority at one point. But I think that they would happily accept white people that would vote the way they wanted. To me, I don't think it's a racial thing. I just think that they get away with it because they understand that right now it's okay to denigrate certain races that are deemed oppressors. And so that's why they get away with it. Nonetheless, Tucker Carlson shouldn't be beholden that because he said that someone took that and went out and did something heinous. But if you are someone who's going to say that he should be blamed for that, how can you then claim that the entire other political side of the aisle is going to commit genocide? That is a magnitude worse than what Vaush was complaining about what Tucker Carlson did. But that's exactly what he's doing. He's not saying, if it's up to conservatives, they'll make sure that immigration stops and white people remain the majority. He's saying they're literally going to commit genocide against people they disagree with. Now, he doesn't cite any evidence as how that's the case, nor have I heard anyone in any sort of prominent position, culturally or politically on the Republican or conservative side, advocate anything close to genocide against gay people. Haven't heard anything close to that. But Vaush just says it as if it's matter of fact. Now, I believe he has another clip here. Let's see if I can find it where he makes similar point.
I'll just be a bit more direct here. I think that for interpersonal conversations, it's very important to adopt certain rhetorical approaches to make people feel like they're understood and to address their concerns. I also feel like we're on the precipice of a genocide. And I know, looking at history, that your approach has been ineffective.
It's so cringe, dude.
Would you have told the Jews back in 32 in Germany?
Can somebody tweet?
And here we go. This is the argument you hear quite often.
This comes directly from the "is it okay to punch a Nazi?" The next argument they'll say is, wouldn't you have stopped in the early 30s? Wouldn't you have stopped the Nazis if you could have? Wouldn't you have killed Hitler? Wouldn't you have killed the Nazis before they rose to power? And what this is it's not even a dog whistle. It's a blatant call. We are literally facing Nazis that are about to commit genocide to people on our side. And wouldn't you have used violence to stop the people before they rose that were doing that in the 30s? It's not difficult to see exactly what he's implying here. Exactly what he's implying. He is accusing others of what he's suggesting. He's suggesting using violence against his political opponents. Take them out before they take us out. No one serious on the other side is now, there are people saying this on the right, if you could call them on the right, and that's the dissident right. The white nationalist. Those sorts of people who we rightfully say are unhinged and should be rebuked. But this is what you get for people. If I said things like, by the way, I'm bearing the lead because we'll get to maybe you're saying right here, listen, he's not really suggesting that. He might be sort of suggesting it, but you can understand how his audience would take from that you should use violence. Just like we should have used lethal force to stop the Nazis before they came to power. We're on the precipice of a genocide now. He actually brings up, shouldn't we have stopped the Nazis in 32? But just in case that's not clear-cut enough for you. Well, one more clip first. Let's hear him clarify some more.
By the way, liberals need to be afraid. They should be afraid. We are at the precipice of a very difficult social situation. Their
Don't
fear
you think that that's
needs to be politically
incredibly
effective.
exaggerated?
Wait, what is?
Yeah, we're about a genocide's about to happen, and we need to all go get guns and
that right there is
slaughter.
why we're not a part of the same group. No, we're literally like if you look at any like lead up to a genocide like charts. Like,
Jesus Christ, dude. Do you think it's because he fought with somebody? I'm trying to figure out like what is happening in his brain. Maybe because he fought with somebody left-leaning groups recently, he feels like he has to be like as insanely extremist as possible in order to like win back the love of some of these people. Or
where are you?
Like this is Alex Jones tier. This video.
Alex Jones isn't this
it's
bad.
not ambiguous. Those charts weren't written by leftists. I mean, we're at the point right now where, right-wing media is coordinating to condition their audience to think of all queer people, or even people with colored hair, Jesus, as groomers and pedophiles, which is a clear element of dehumanization, which leads up to legal oppression, which we're getting through currently, right now, unstopping, and following that,
So here's the big difference.
So do you see? So because thanks so much for the follow, I appreciate it. Because right-wingers are calling out when people are telling 5-year-olds about sexualization and saying that's wrong, that needs to be rebuked, we should pass laws that say that can't happen. Well, that means we want to commit genocide against all people on the left. That is absurd. Absolutely absurd. But he's quite clear in what he's saying. The person that he's talking to here is like, I think you're going too far. This is extreme. He says, he doubles down, just in case you were wondering. Well, it's just him being, sort of hyperbolic here. No, he's saying absolutely. And even those on the left that don't recognize, you're not in my group if you don't recognize we're on the precipice of this genocide. But this, to me, is the coup de grace. All of this, you could say, okay. But he's not really prescribing a solution. He's just saying, get prepared. I want you to imagine that a right-winger would say this on a platform such as Twitch or YouTube, and consider what would happen to them. Ready?
But like others will say like, no, don't do that. There might be attempts at ousting. Remember during the Black Lives Matter rallies, there were like those Patriot prayer dumb fucks rolling their, $60,000 trucks through like urban neighborhoods with a bunch of guys with guns in the pickup trucks. When that happens, I want people to be able to take shots at them from apartment windows.
Take shit. They weren't. There's okay. If you want to drive around with guns, you have.
Did you hear that? Did you hear what he just said? He said, you remember the Patriot prayer people in Portland that were driving around with guns? When that happens, I want lefties to take shots at them from out windows. That's what Vaush said. Vaush didn't say, imagine if the Patriot prayer people would have got out of hand and came down from the hills shooting people with AR-15s. That is not what Vaush said. Now, let's play one more time what he said here. Let's slow it down. The person that he's talking to here is like, I think you're going too far. This is extreme. He says, he doubles down, just in case you were wondering. Well, it's just him being, sort of hyperbolic here. No, he's saying absolutely. And even those on the left that don't recognize, you're not in my group if you don't recognize we're on the precipice of this genocide. But this, to me, is the coup de grace. All of this, you could say, okay. But he's not really prescribing a solution. He's just saying, get prepared. I want you to imagine that a right-winger would say this on a platform such as Twitch or YouTube, and consider what would happen to them. Ready?
But like others will say like, no, don't do that. There might be attempts at ousting. Remember during the Black Lives Matter rallies, there were like those Patriot prayer dumb fucks rolling their, $60,000 trucks through like urban neighborhoods with a bunch of guys with guns in the pickup trucks. When that happens, I want people to be able to take shots at them from apartment windows.
Take shit. They weren't. There's okay. If you want to drive around with guns.
Did you hear? Hear that?
I'm just going to condense all of them together.
We're sort of doing here. So
We teach about them, and then like
to conservatives over and over, to Nazis, as you're sort of doing here. And in that debate, I believe it was with a left-winger, you continually said, shouldn't we have stopped the Nazis in the 30s before they took power? You then went on to make a statement that I want to ask if you still agree with. You said that you want a world where left-wingers could shoot out windows at the Patriot Prayer type people in Portland, where, by the way, a Patriot Prayer member was executed in that very situation. He was open carrying, that group was open carrying lawfully. And you said you would like to see them shot. How can you criticize someone for taking a step that might lead to violence when you yourself are directly calling for it?
First of all, obviously not all violence is equivalent. You'd have to morally assess it. But second of all, you're mischaracterizing my position. I didn't say that people should have been shooting at the Patriot Prayer boys. I was saying that if ever we reached a hypothetical scenario where right-wing militias were invading cities, shooting and killing people in some kind of social collapse situation, society falls apart, all the right-wingers in the hills of Washington and Oregon run out of the cities with their AR-15s and such. Under those situations, obviously, shooting at them would just be a matter of simple self-defense. That's a
I didn't hear you say that. You didn't say that. If you're clarifying those remarks, that's fine. But in the
pretty easy ethical one.
The context of that conversation, you didn't say. You referenced the specific action the Patriot Prayer was taking. You said.
Did you hear it? Let's hear it again. Ready?
Well, obviously not all violence is equivalent. You'd have to morally assess it. But second of all, you're mischaracterizing my position. I didn't say that people should have been shooting at the Patriot Prayer boys. I was saying that if ever we reached a hypothetical scenario where right-wing militias were invading cities, shooting and killing people in some kind of social collapse situation, society falls apart, all the right-wingers in the hills of Washington and Oregon run out of the cities with their AR-15s and such. Under those situations, obviously, shooting at them would just be a matter of simple self.
Let's hear what he said again.
You have what is happening in his brain? Maybe because he fought with somebody left-leaning.
Alex Jones isn't this
It's
bad.
not ambiguous. Those charts weren't written by leftists. I mean, we're at the...
You were wondering.
No, don't do that. There might be attempts at ousting. Remember during the Black Lives Matter rallies, there were like those Patriot Prayer dumb fucks rolling their, $60,000 trucks through like urban neighborhoods with a bunch of guys with guns in the pickup trucks. When that happens, I want people to be able to take shots at them from apartment windows.
Take shit.
Let's one more time for you. Ready? Ready? Here's what Vaush says. Or here's our... Oops, sorry.
Prayer type people in Portland that you still agree with. You said that you want a world where left-wingers could shoot out windows at the Patriot Prayer type people in Portland, where, by the way, a Patriot Prayer member was executed in that very situation. He was open carrying, that group was open carrying lawfully. And you said you would like to see them shot. How can you criticize someone for taking a step that might lead to violence when you yourself are directly calling for it?
First of all, obviously not all violence is equivalent. You'd have to morally assess it. But second of all, you're mischaracterizing my position. I didn't say that people should have been shooting at the Patriot Prayer boys. I was saying that if ever we reached a hypothetical scenario where right-wing militias were invading cities, shooting and killing people in some kind of social collapse situation, society falls apart, all the right-wingers in the hills of Washington and Oregon run out of the cities with their AR-15s and such. Under those situations, obviously, shooting at them would just be a matter of simple self-defense. That's a... Black Lives Matter rallies, there were like those Patriot Prayer dumb fucks rolling their, $60,000 trucks through like urban neighborhoods with a bunch of guys with guns in the pickup trucks. When that happens, I want people to be able to take shots at them from apartment windows.
Take shit. They weren't... There's okay. If you want to drive around with...
Got it? You see? Now, do you understand why Vaush doesn't want to debate me? Get it? Now imagine Vaush going on the Crucible and debating about Jordan Peterson saying, this gentleman's dangerous. He could inspire people to violence. While Vaush is on his show saying, I want left-wingers to take pot shots with their guns at Americans that are lawfully open carrying. That's what I want.
And then when called out on it, he just lies. And if you go back and you look at the debate review I did of Vaush versus Jackson Hinkle, I talk about this. Vaush basically has two strategies to debate. One is this sort of sophistry using $10 words where, well, the axiomatic differences between what we talk about our epistemology would let you lead vis-a-vis that you would understand the difference in the sort of rhetoric orientation that we have on this. Like, right, you didn't say shit. That's step one. And he sounds very confident he does when he talks, which is a positive. And step two is just blatantly lie. Just lie. And if you get called out in your lie, just move forward. It's what he did in the Jackson Hinkle debate. So, wasn't really the subject of today's show, but that's why Vaush doesn't want to debate me. Because he knows I could call out this bullshit. And for him to pretend, to lie and claim, it would have been different if he said, look, I was in a bad mood, I was hyperbolic, yeah, I should be more careful with what I say, you're right. But he didn't. He said, well, not all violence is equivalent, and that's not what I was saying. Yes, it was. It's exactly what he was saying. So maybe I'll clip that and make that a video, a little YouTube short. Vaush calling for the shooting of conservatives. They always accuse you of what they themselves are doing. Now you can go through. I'm 100%. I'm 99.9999% positive. You can go through the entirety of every stream I've ever done, and you will never hear me remotely calling for any violence against political opposition, let alone shooting at them. That's right, Aftershock. That's exactly what he would say. It's the same people that insert everything into culture. You can't go into a classroom without having their culture shoved down your throat. And then when you say, we don't like this, they go, wow, why are you talking about the culture war? Oh, you're so triggered by pronouns. Dude, you literally are the type of people that will lose your shit if people don't use the pronouns that you demand. And when we say, yeah, that's stupid, you freak out and you say, oh, why are you so worried about pronouns? So, just a little tidbit. By the way, if you're bored and you want to watch a debate that's very different, go and watch the Crucible debate the other night between two vegans and a farmer by the name of Garland Farms. It was fantastic. It was a master class in someone who doesn't have a traditional background in debate. So they don't talk fluidly. They don't, it's very difficult, actually. Very slow cadence and a even kill voice. It's almost monotone from Garland Farms. But a man who knows his field. And I say this all the time. People are like, well, Rob, you're a really good debater. I wouldn't want to debate you. Why not? What are we debating about? If it's something that I'm knowledgeable at and you're not, then yeah, you would look bad. But even if you think you're not a good public speaker, but you intimately know a particular thing, you could easily win a debate. If I debated anyone here on, anything mechanical, I would get crushed. I'm terrible at that stuff. And it was refreshing to see. One of the reasons that I started this show is I am good at debate. I am a decent public speaker. And I see all these people where I live in rural Pennsylvania. No one's really speaking in this sphere for the issues that they're concerned with. And a lot of the people I know are farmers, truck drivers, farmers, welders. I talk to farmers a lot, small family farms. And so hearing Garland Farms go on and actually do a debate, I loved it. It took a while to get used to it, but once you realize, this guy knows his shit. And apparently he's going to debate Vegan Gains here soon, so that'll be fun. So that's the show for this evening. I think I'm going to wrap it up. Anything real quick that anyone wanted to talk about? I'll briefly make a couple of appeals to you again. One, consider donating to me financially. You can see my subscriber go up there. Trying to get money to buy a computer for streaming, so I'm trying to purchase that Wednesday. Obviously, I won't raise the funds for that, but I've had some money put aside. I get paid Wednesday. So if you got a few bucks to throw at me, by all means. Though in this economy, who the hell has a few bucks? But if you do, I'll happily take your money. So hopefully you have that new computer in a couple weeks here, completely built. Yeah, I'm building it. Aftershock and a friend of his helped steer me in the right direction of the parts to buy. So I'm going to try to build it. It will be my first build, so hopefully that's successful. But that should incredibly increase. Oh yeah, Sweet Tat. A lot of times I don't outright ban people, but I make it so if it's just a troll, I make it so I can't see them in the chat. So I have no idea who you all are talking about. It must be someone that I previously got tired of for being a troll. But by all means, thanks for watching my show, troll, whatever your name is, and I appreciate it. The other thing is, I should be streaming tomorrow evening unless something comes up with work. Wednesdays I take off. Thursday I'll be streaming. Actually, I'm going to be a little early Thursday. I think I'm going to start streaming at 7 p.m. I'm going to be on my friend Let's Be Frank's channel, so I'll probably do his show and then just do a show of mine afterwards. So thank you, Kenneth. I really appreciate it. Friday, probably taking off, but Saturday night will be the inaugural The Arena with robnoerr. It's going to be a panel debate show. I believe the topic for the first show, unless this is subject to change, but it should be locked down. Yeah, Aftershock, you can suggest the right. The topic is, who's more evil, the right or the left? So that's going to be the topic. The way it's going to work is... oh, no problem, Kenneth. No, I don't think you're a troll. Thanks, man. There could be... That's the only topic that's going to be announced. It's going to be a 3-hour show. 2 hours will be the debate. The third hour will be audience call-ins and reading super chats. So I believe that show, that's going to be 8 p.m. Saturday. I'll be moderating with a 6 to 7 person panel. And I believe that show, until I get my new computer, will be exclusively streamed to the Crucible's YouTube channel and their Comfy channel. It will be exclusive because my computer is so shitty that if I try to stream it to multiple places, it'll crash. And as a host, that would be bad form. So what I will do is record that video and then upload it to my Rumble and probably to my YouTube, as long as it's terms of service friendly. So, but you'll have your opportunity to super chat and have questions for the panelists or potentially call in. So I hope you'll consider. And let me say one thing. I didn't mention this the other night. First off, you should never feel bad giving money to the Crucible, to comfy.stream, to Andrew Wilson. I think even if you're a lefty, understand that he's building a platform that is the premier debate platform for righties, for lefties, and for anyone in between. So you should always feel good if you're donating to him anyways. But secondly, if you're the type of person that says, well, I would rather give my money directly to Rob and Aftershock, the Crucible has been so cool and Andrew's been so cool. All of the money that is donated on that show will come to Aftershock and I. So if you donate on that evening, that money's still going to end up with me and Aftershock. So I think it's a good opportunity also to sort of raise some funds for the computer. And, you know, I don't know what Aftershock uses money for. He's probably like, you know, collects stamps or some shit like that would be my guess. So you can help him in that endeavor. Pokemon cards, maybe he's Aftershock. Hookers and cocaine, okay. Also good, also good. Pokemon cards or hookers, one or the other. So yeah, it should be a great show. So I'll remind you of that show, and we'll have the guests finalized hopefully by Thursday or Friday, so I'll be able to tell you who all the guests will be. But it'll be a great show. It will be the premier panel show. It's a bummer that I have to moderate for it to be the premier show because I would love to debate in it, but that's okay. I'm a badass moderator too. I'm going to keep it fun. It's going to have an edge to it. The show's going to have an edge. We want people with thick skin that are panelists, And we're okay with some people going back and forth with each other, as long as it doesn't get ridiculously out of hand, calling for violence or slurs and things of that nature. But if someone says, I think you're a fucking idiot and let me tell you why, we're all cool for it. So I think that you're going to really enjoy this show. I take my job as a moderator quite seriously, and I will make sure that I'm doing an excellent job, not just so that the panelists could be entertained, but also so the audience could be entertained. And again, it will be specializing. It'll be the first panel debate show that 1/3 of the show will be audience interaction. So I think that it'll be really a good time for you all to be in the audience. If we get someone like Vaush on and says something stupid, you'll get to call in. You'll get to put a super chat asking him a question or telling him how stupid he is. Or if you think that, whoever, if you're a lefty and you want to say that Andrew Wilson's a piece of shit, or you want to say my moderation's shitty, that's okay. That's okay. Can Aftershock and I take turns debating and moderating? Aftershock is the producer, and he should remain the producer, so he should not debate or moderate. I should not debate either, because I'm the moderator, so I should try to limit any production and limit the debating. That's how the show will work best. Now, one of the beauties of this is, though, if we have a panel show, and on that show there is a topic where there's someone saying something, it will be quite easy for me after the show to say, we're on the Crucible, my friend Andrew Wilson would be more than happy to moderate me and you having a one-on-one debate. And I thrive in the one-on-one debate. So I think that this will have the benefit of allowing me to have far more one-on-one debates. So I'm really looking forward to that. But for the purposes of this show, everyone's going to sort of stay in their lane. So, All right, Aftershock, who do you want to raid? You said you wanted to pick someone? Fire away. The raid's just for Twitch. I know you could do it on YouTube as well, but I haven't done that yet. Okay, that's how you spell the name? Alright, let's try it. So, whatever this person's name is, Chilinik or something. So, now I also painstakingly created a new outro, so I hope that you all enjoy this outro. I had a lot of fun this evening. I really do appreciate, especially the donations, but anyone that's been here. Some of you have been with me for years. I really do appreciate it. I'm telling you, the channel is going to start growing by leaps and bounds. So I'm really committed to making it work, and I'm really thankful that I have the best audience that doesn't always agree with me, but that's what's great about this audience. It is a fantastic audience. I really enjoy my interactions with you, and I really do think that you all make this show what it is. I stream for one reason primarily, and that's to have fun, and you all make it fun. So thank you so much. Special thanks to Aftershock, who always does a great job. I hope you enjoy this raid of Chilinik, and as always, have a good one.